you are one of the few people, Jaimie, that have the title VP of SEO, right? Is that true or no? Because you were just telling me before we got here that it's not really out there.
I think it's picking up. It's growing.
Okay.
Maybe like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, obviously, it just probably turned into VP of marketing. But I think, yeah, the industry has seen a healthy growth in VPs of organic.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, SEO, since you probably got it started or early, it's always been known as this like kind of mystical, fake way of driving traffic, and nobody wanted to like say we do SEO. And now for people not just to have directors of SEO and stuff like that, but have real like high level VP status of SEO, it really kind of makes the SEO industry look legit on some level. And it's always been legit. It's just, it's nice to see that. And you both had amazing careers. And the question is, like, for somebody listening to this who's just getting started in SEO, you know, it probably to them also feels like this, like, what is this mystical stuff? I stick some keywords here, title tags there, and all of a sudden I'm doing well. What should they look at in terms of making sure they're on the right path to where they're starting and where maybe to get to that VP status?
Yeah, I think early on, I wasn't sure like what part of SEO was going to stick, if you will. I kind of, I loved that it was always changing, and I felt like every time I got a handle on one part, something else would change somewhere else. So I personally had a drive to understand each moving part of the machine. And I think someone who's younger in their career, like, see what takes you where, because a lot of the success of a good SEO is having that like investigative nature. Like, you want to go down the rabbit holes and figure it out. We're basically reverse engineering Google in many ways, and having a creative application of what we find. So you kind of have to like see what sticks. And then I think over time, the acceleration of Google to become more sophisticated, and really organizations realizing that like organic traffic actually isn't by accident, and there is a humongous ROI if you really invest time and resources in it. Both of those things like coming together has opened like a huge pathway for different types of senior SEO roles, especially the bigger the company, whether it's agency or in-house. My role specifically now at Centerfield is a good way of kind of understanding how different verticals play together, and different types of search results, if you will. The same story at New York Times, where you have news search results, cooking results, games, evergreen SEO, everything under the gamut there. I think the biggest difference between director level and VP, though, really starts like taking off on the soft skills, even if you're not just trying to convince people to do things. Understanding the longer term strategic vision, communicating it, having leadership skills, actually being able to align business goals, come up with like the 5-year plan, even though you have no idea exactly where Google will be in 5 years. It's this like beast you can't control, but you can still come up with a plan to grab audience with search, because search is clearly not going anywhere. Everyone's, just so used to getting information instantly. So yeah, there's a few different paths I think an SEO can take overall, if you're starting out now, especially because it touches so many disciplines. Like product is also a big one. That's usually SEO heavy.
Right.
VP of audience at a company where
right.
audience is primarily driven through search is another route. So I think there's a lot of, endless possibilities in where it could go. But either way, I think the way you talk about it, communicate it, it's not just, about the tactical anymore at the VP level, is the biggest piece you have to make sure to advance on.
So being the VP of SEO, does that narrow it still to organic stuff? Or is it also, you have to know about paid, you have to know about display, you have to know about this other stuff, or it's still focused on SEO?
Good question. So for me in my role, it's strictly organic search focused.
Okay.
Of course, I understand how all of the parts, play into the whole. But even thinking about link building at Centerfield, we have a very robust research team that builds out content, specifically data-oriented research for the purposes of PR and link shares. And that's really how we built a lot of the success of our sites. Do I have content marketing in my title? No, but I fully understand how that team works and how they accelerate the SEO strategy. So from that point, there are touch points, but I'm leading organic growth strictly.
Right. So just to go back to this whole thing, you went from head of SEO title to VP of SEO. Was that important, like when you took on this job, to kind of like for the community itself to say there needs to be another person with a VP status on SEO?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I literally, typing it into my LinkedIn, I felt like I was helping especially women in SEO fast forward 10 years. It just felt really good. And I think that, I'd been at the New York Times for 8 years and loved it so much. And I could have, stayed there for 20 more years. I just didn't want to wait around, and they just weren't ready for a VP of SEO level, or SVP really, let's be honest, because they have so much going on with search.
Right.
So it was important for me to feel like I was moving forward when the right opportunity came along. Right. I wasn't, rushing out.
That was my next question. It seems like you, especially for these types of changes to happen, that you kind of have to say, I like where I am now, but for me to make the next step for myself and for the industry, I kind of have to move on.
Yep.
Which as me and probably your husband as a owner of a business, we hate that. We don't want people moving on. But for the people working at the companies, for them and also for the industry, they actually do have to say, you know what? I've done what I can here in this industry. I need to go, in this company, I need to go ahead and move on for myself and for the thing. And it's probably hard to do, but.
Yep, definitely. But yeah, short answer was very calculated from that perspective, and I knew what it meant in the bigger picture.
I think it's an interesting thing that companies are going to have to figure out is this industry as a whole is maturing. So there may have not been as much of a need for VP roles or senior VP roles just because maybe the tenure didn't align with a traditional kind of hierarchy of roles. And I think as the industry matures, as people are in these roles for 10, 12, 15 years, there has to be more of maybe a focus on kind of building out that track. I don't think it's something that a lot of companies have thought about. And maybe that's comes down to some of the investment in terms of you're going to spend millions of dollars in paid search, but you're going to have this one SEO guy that's one person for a whole company. And as you start to build out that team, you kind of need that employee title architecture to support it. I think it's something that companies have to give maybe a second thought to.
Interesting.
I definitely had that conversation truthfully with leadership at Wirecutter when I left. I purposely said I think my backfill should be a senior manager, so there's room to grow, but you're not going to be able to ignore that if you want to really get the talent to have the strategy that's ahead of all of your competitors, you're going to have to adjust the career lattice because you're just not going to be able to ride on the brand name forever to hire top talent like that.
Right. It makes me wonder, somebody like John Shihada, I think his title doesn't have SEO, it's VP.
He's VP, yep.
But I don't think I don't think his title says SEO.
No, it's broad. It's either I think it's audience.
Right. And I wonder, you specifically wanted that SEO in the title. You didn't want to have of traffic of whatever. You wanted SEO.
I did because my last year at Wirecutter, we got a much needed structure, to be honest, across the whole company, but mostly product engineering, to say these are the work streams. This is what we're trying to achieve. And in many ways, when I think you go into VP of audience, you're overseeing different functions within audience. And my passion was in SEO, and not that like I didn't want to give newsletters or social a chance, but I didn't feel like I was gonna succeed in this seat of pushing back on newsletter, like we're only doing this in this like smaller piece.
Right.
SEO needs to be everything. I was always going to be driving for SEO at heart, so let's just, call it what it is and not beat around the bush here.
Like John says, like his thing, he's an SEO at heart. Like he loves SEO, but he's doing all these other things. I like that you made sure that it was SEO in the title, so kudos on that.